My biggest fear with doing AI is that it just writes it and then my art is gone.
Yeah. If you want to have a really good book, there's two components, okay? Number one,
No offense to any ghostwriters I've ever interacted with in the past.
what if I told you the work was already freaking done? You already did the work. When you stood up here and you bled out and you did everything you could to bless everybody in this audience, you did the work, you put in the time. So now let's take that and polish it and harness it, and then it's lightning in a bottle.
Kevin Clayson,
Steve Larson.
thanks for coming to the show.
Dude, thank you for having me, man. This is awesome. I'm in Boise with Steve Larson on your stage. This is amazing, dude.
I'm psyched. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, this is great, dude.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
It was a very natural, we need to chat. We need to be on camera when we do this because what you're doing is pretty unique. But I feel like, we all do this as entrepreneurs. We go down a path for a little while and then we're like, wait a second, I'm a pioneer and a discoverer. Let me go down this as well.
Totally.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you to come in and share with us what you're doing with this AI stuff that
Yeah.
you're doing. But you also have a full, very successful company in real estate.
Yes.
Can you tell everyone just kind of what you do for a moment?
Yeah, for sure. So, I was not born an entrepreneur. Let me be clear. I grew up in a house where it was like, we go to school and we get a job, and that was the thing that we do. And I don't know a single entrepreneur in my family, okay? It doesn't exist. And so the idea of ever owning a business was like totally weird to me. Did not expect it. Well, what ended up happening is I went to school and I got the degree, but I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up.
Sure.
And so I just got a job. And so I got a job doing mortgages because it seemed like that would make money. And so, but it was great because I was smiling and dialing, right? Trying to go find business. At first it was for Wells Fargo Financial. I left Wells Fargo Financial. I went and became an independent mortgage broker. And during that process, I called my buddy that I knew was like doing real estate. And I'm like, oh, real estate needs mortgages. I should call him. So I called him and I was like, hey dude, do you need somebody to do your mortgages? I was just trying to drum up business.
Yeah.
And what that morphed into was he and I and a couple other guys deciding to start a company. But for me, it wasn't really starting a company. It was just like, oh, I'm going to do mortgages over here now, right? And that's just what I'm going to do. But it was inside of this framework that became our real estate company. And so our real estate company today is called Done For You Real Estate, and it is a soup to nuts, front to back. We do 100%. We do 100% of the work. Well, 95% of the work. Our clients keep 100% of the benefit. So we've got physical teams all over the country. We find the real estate. We fix up the real estate. We do the financing. We do the insurance. We help you get it purchased, and then we get it rented out, and then our clients make 100% of the profit. So we own a mortgage brokerage, we own a real estate brokerage, we own an insurance brokerage, we own our kind of marketing company, and that's what Done For You Real Estate is. So we've been doing this for 15 years now.
Yeah.
We've helped our clients do over $1 billion in real estate transactions. So we just help the everyman own investment real estate.
Well, and when you and I were talking this last week together, with your team as well.
Yeah.
You guys have done 1,800 buys in the last it's a lot.
Last couple years. Yeah, we've done a total of
It's not like you're trickling them in.
No.
You're doing a lot of volume every month.
Yeah, we've done between 5,000 and 6,000 purchase transactions with our clients, which is a ton.
Jeez, man.
If you just think of if you're a real estate agent and you're like, oh, when you think of what one deal needs.
Yeah.
And then we're not just doing the deal as a real estate agent because we're also doing the mortgage. So we have the home mortgage team. We're also doing the insurance. We're also making sure it's getting rehabbed and managed. And so there's a lot that's there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty cool. We've helped, I think honestly, dude, the coolest thing for the real estate side, I'll just share this one story because this is for me, why we do this. So a year or two ago at Funnel Hacking Live, I got a text message from one of our team, and he told me that one of our favorite clients had passed away.
Oh.
And I was really sad. And I was like, oh, he was the coolest guy. But what was nuts is this guy on our team, he sent me a text to the obituary. And in the obituary, so this client of ours, he was a school teacher. He was a Hall of Fame basketball player in Indiana. So he was on the team that came after the Hoosiers, if you know the Hoosiers movie and story with Gene Hackman. So he was on this next team. So he was a basketball guy. He was a really religious guy. He was a school teacher, had no idea how he was going to retire. So we ended up helping him begin to acquire real estate, and he had acquired a portfolio of over 10 homes, which is awesome over, about a 10-year or so time frame. And I get this link to the obituary, and I look in the obituary, and in the obituary, it talked about how Ron and his son Mike, who, by the way, had a lifelong medical condition, how in his later years, he and Mike had spent a lot of their time loving and doing real estate together. And it was this moment where I went, wait, we made the obituary, dude. But really,
Wow.
it changed his son's life. It changed now his widow's life. It changed his life. And all of a sudden, it kind of was that moment where it's like, wait, we're not just in business. We are doing something that is significant for people that really makes an incredible lasting difference. And honestly, that mentality is worth chasing. And it's ultimately why I think we also started this other thing that we're doing now with books and helping people solidify a legacy in kind of a different way.
I think that's what's powerful about it. So, and that's one of my favorite things is just to bring innovators on here, right? That's really my entire angle on doing this is to interview, because it's a very unique mindset where, and I'm not bashing muggles.
Yeah.
All right.
Right.
But there's a mentality out there.
Yes.
Where it's like, look, I'm just going to go do my 9 to 5, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I work. I think it's fine.
Wait a second. I'm a squib. Dude, no, Harry Potter. Dude, I just realized that, right? Because I don't feel like I'm an entrepreneur, but I live in this world now, and I try to do entrepreneur things, and I guess I am now, but I'm like a squid, because in Harry Potter,
you're not.
right? There's the muggles and squibs, or people that don't have magical powers, but they live in that world. That's it. I just figured out my identity.
It's going to be the new thing out there. Identify as squib. Dude, it's so funny, though. That's one of the reasons why I want to bring people on is because it is such a unique mentality where you don't have to do it.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
No.
You're taking on problems that you don't have to go solve, that no one actually assigned to you. It's not like you're in school and it's like, this is your homework.
Yeah.
It's the unique love and passion that you move forward.
But you know, though, you said we don't have to, but I think so. I just think of my personal evolution. I was not an entrepreneur. We started this company, and then spending time with people like you that are innovators, that are big thinkers, spending time with, in the ClickFunnels community or, with Russell Brunson, people like that are big thinkers. I think it's changed me 100%. And now I do feel like I have to, right? I think for some reason, maybe it's just being around people like you, right? It's like you see entrepreneurs and innovators that solve real problems for people. And when you realize you possess that capability as well, I think it becomes it's like you change your DNA, you've rewired your brain. So now you look at the world that way. And so now I think, because we've had rough times financially as a company and just personally, and old me goes, all right, how do I go? This actually happened to me in real life. How do I go get a job to put food on the table?
Sure.
And then this version of me is, over the years, it's become, how do I innovate something that provides so much value that someone can't help but want to trade their value for the value I'm bringing them? And that now you're an entrepreneur, because that's what we do, right? We solve problems. Yeah. We innovate. And then we provide significantly more value than we ask for in return, but we get value in return. And so now I feel compelled to do that.
And I agree with that 100%, that it's a, because when I think through times where I was in definitely low points, and it was, we all know that quote where it's like, if you help enough people get what they want.
Ziglar. Yeah.
Yeah. Then you're going to get what you want, kind of thing. And it's like, I had to relearn that.
Yeah.
And which is great. But then there's this natural energy that comes that frankly, I know isn't all coming from me, because I know what it's like when I'm just left to my own,
Sure.
When your vision runs out.
Yeah, totally.
I do want to shift gears here though, just a little bit, because what I see you doing now, you're helping solve a huge problem that I have, which is that I have not, dude, everyone asks me when my books are coming out.
Yeah.
And I haven't put one out. And I've been in this space for 10 years now, man. And I'm looking backwards. I'm like, oh, there's a lot of stuff that,
Bro, you are prolific.
Thanks, man.
No, I mean, seriously, you are one of the most powerful, innovative thinkers in marketing and sales, hands down, bar none. It's why, like, from the first time I ever heard you speak on stage, like, I wanted to have you in my sphere. So that's why I'm saying, like, it's actually such an honor to be sitting here with you, because I've looked up to you for so long because you are so prolific. And that's why the whole world does need all of your ideas.
Thanks, man. It's very, very nice
true.
of you.
Yeah.
But the act of going, I think it's just because I was so involved in like some of the Secrets trilogy. That like watching what it takes to put out a good book, not just like something that you transcribe.
No.
Like I just have never gone off and done it.
Yeah.
And so I just want to tell everyone, like, so what you've been doing is, I worked for 5 years on this material, and then Russell and I are co-authoring this book, Dramatic Demonstrations. And the way we get books written is unique. I like to do them on stage, in front of audiences, teach the material for years, which I'm so glad that I do that, because it cleans it and refines it and cleans it and refines it. And now it's finally at the spot where I'm like, it's ready. All right, so then when we do this workshop, and now I'm looking at 3 days worth of recordings of stuff that is so good. I've never done it that good. But now I'm like, oh my gosh, next mountain to go climb is writing a book. And then you're like, I have an idea.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is it? Yeah. And I was like, wait, let's go do it. And then, 2 weeks later, I'm looking at a book, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
I mean, so guide us through this, because you're using AI to ghostwrite.
Yes.
And the first time I ever heard about this, I mean, no offense to any ghostwriters I've ever interacted with in the past, but they don't do a great job at capturing my voice.
Nope.
I end up rewriting everything anyway.
Yeah.
And granted, this thing's to rewrite with the one you handed, but it's not. It's still my voice.
Yes.
Like, this is not ghostwriting as we know it.
Your voice, yeah.
You're the first person I know of who's been ghostwriting with AI. I've seen people use AI to write a full book, but never ghostwrite.
Yeah.
Walk us through what you're doing.
Yeah, so here's why it's different and why it had to be different. So I do identify as an author, okay?
Yeah.
The reason why I say that is, like, I always wanted to write a book. Like, I remember I had a marketing mentor, one of my first marketing mentors. He was kind of a speaker coach, but he really talked a lot about marketing. And he's the one that convinced me, like, you have to have a book. But his method for getting people a book, it was kind of trash, right? His method was like, yeah, you just have to, like, have a book so that people know you have a book, and then they're going to book you to speak. But I didn't really identify with that, because I'm like, no, if I'm going to do a book, it's got to have my soul in it. Like, that's what I always say. It has to have my soul. And if it doesn't have my soul, it's not my book, right? And so years go by, and I stumble into this content that I'm using to train at a time when we had a pretty large national sales team for one of our real estate companies. And I'm using this content to just train them. And it was content on gratitude. And I had no intention that was going to be like my first real book or whatever. And I ended up, everybody did to me what you hear all the time, like, when's your book coming out? When's your book? You got to put this in a book.
Yeah.
And I was like, ugh. And just the thought of it was so mind-numbing. Like, where do I start? How do I do this? What do I do? I don't know. Knowing I needed to do the gratitude book, in my mind, I was like, if I could just get something published, even though it's not like my dream book yet, if I could just get something published, maybe I'd get over that hump of, like, doing books. And so I did a couple anthology books, which, by the way, are kind of trash. But, like, an anthology book, like, there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that will, like, say, you could have a chapter in my book, and I have a big name, and so don't you want to be in my book? And, like, no offense to those that like that and do that. I did 2 of them, and it turned into nothing, right? But the one thing it did do, bro, is it made me say, I all of a sudden I had this identity that I am a published author.
Yeah.
Even though it was a chapter in an anthology book that did nothing for my business. But I am a published author. And so all of a sudden it was like, go time. I need to do my gratitude book. Now, the problem was going to be like, where do I start?
Right. Because you just stare at a blinking cursor. I can't tell you how many times I've sat down to begin writing a book.
Yeah.
And I can't even get through the table of contents because I'm like,
yeah.
It's not that I don't have anything to say. It's that, like, organizing it into a solid point, like 100%. That whole exercise, like, whew. But if it's a stage speech, I can crank that out.
Oh,
you know?
100%. Yeah, because
I got a formula.
Can I tell you what I think the difference is there? And then I'll kind of get back to the story.
Yeah.
When we build a stage speech, when we build a 3-day event, we're building it with one thing in mind, which is the end goal that we hope that the audience is going to kind of get to, or that they're going to have a big aha, or that we're, at least when I build it, I can't speak for you, but when I build it, I'm constantly thinking about them, and I'm pointing like out to the audience, right? I'm thinking about them. How would I structure the message in a way that it is most likely to have an impact? All I need them to do is to walk away from my event with one big aha. Like, dude, I think about it all the time. You go to speeches and you go to talks, and you could go to the best event, right? It could be freaking Funnel Hacking Live, right? Or one of your 3-day events, and it's going to be amazing. And you're going to come away and you're going to have 1 to 2 really implementable big ideas that will change your business. And so if I know that as a speaker, I'm going to design the event so that I'm telling a story to the person sitting in the chair so that they have an impact. It's different than when we do a book. We're like, I have to put all of my wisdom inside of these pages.
And I can't ever change it, edit it.
No.
It's so permanent. That's why I've not gone off and done it.
It's really, really difficult. And that's kind of what I was facing when I was starting to do Flip the Gratitude Switches. I was like, how do I do this? Like, the message was so important to me that if I'm going to crystallize this in print forevermore, it has to be perfect. And I'm like, I don't know where to start. So I was like, I need to battle the blinking cursor. I always say you got to battle the blinking cursor. So what I did is I was like, what if I could interview people about how gratitude had impacted their life, and then I'll get the interview transcribed, and then I'll write around the interview, right?
Okay, yeah.
I'll lead in, I'll lead out of the interview, and then, hey, that's an easy way to write a book. So I throw it on my social media. I get a bunch of these interviews lined up. Incredible, right? Olympic athletes, people that had been in Afghanistan, people that had lost children, like marriages that had failed, like incredible stories. Somebody that lived through Columbine, like incredible stories, okay? I interview them. I get them all transcribed, and I go, okay, cool. I've got something in print. Now it's time to start writing. And my mind was, oh, now that I already have something, I can write into it. So I was like, I should write an introduction. So I write the introduction. And then I was like, oh, I should add a little bit more context before we get into the stories. Long story short, I didn't include one interview in the book. There's not one in there.
Really?
Not one. And I realized that what that process did for me is it just gave me the permission to say the book is in process now. And now I can take and turn it into what I need. But I still hired a ghostwriter because I was like, I'm still not a professional writer. So my ideas are here, but I had to hire a ghostwriter. But then you run into the problems like you talked about, that a lot of ghostwriters, they don't capture your voice. Thankfully, my ghostwriter did for Flip the Gratitude Switch, but she also charges $50,000.
Right. Right. And that's like the barrier to entry so high in a good, legitimate book. It's a natural thing to go transcribe a speech.
Yes.
And then just ship it.
Yep.
You know, I get that. I get it. You
Yeah.
know, I've created ebooks before where I took tons of podcast episodes, transcribed it, and there we go. And it was like, sweet, it's like 400 pages.
Yeah.
But that's not a book.
No, it's not a book.
It's in the medium of a book, but it's not written as a book.
And so I was like, oh, gosh, we started to do another book for our real estate company. And this time I was like, I don't want to go through even the process that I went through for Flip the Gratitude Switch. So we just hired a ghostwriter, but we hired a book company. And this wasn't going to be $50,000. We paid $120,000.
I've heard that, yeah.
And so we paid $120,000, and it was like pretty conventional. It was like, oh, let's jump on we're going to assign you an author, and then we jump on the phone, and they interview us about our stuff. And then she puts it into a chapter, and every single time I got a chapter back, I was like, this is not me. This is not my voice. This is trash, and I'd have to rewrite it. And I got so frustrated with it, right? I was like, we're paying how much for this?
I got a friend going through that right now.
Oh my gosh.
120. I don't know if it's the same, maybe the same company, maybe not, but yeah.
Dude, and
then it's your art.
Yes.
And that's the part that's most
Yeah.
offensive to me through the process is like, you have no idea what I have to go through to find and farm out, test, prove, clean, and then learn how to teach, tell the right stories, all the right epiphanies. It's such an internal process that is this journey that then to see it come back, I'm like, I might as well sit down and just stare at a blinking cursor. But then it's
100%.
just this loop.
And it just takes
I'm
forever.
stuck on this loop.
So long story short, this company, we paid 120 grand. They ended up kind of like going out of business, and then they got purchased by somebody. But I got my manuscript back, right? We had a version of it, but I was like, this isn't good enough. And so I started to sit down and rewrite it. And then I was like, I don't want to go to somebody else anymore for this book because it's mine. And so I was like, what if I could take this manuscript that now I believe is mine, and what if I could polish it up instead of having to pay somebody else? And so I started to use AI to test whether or not I could polish my words. Like, what I wanted to make sure I could do is, would AI be able to capture my voice and not take my soul out of the book? And it turned out amazing, because it was already my ideas, it was already my content, it was already fleshed out, I had already figured out how to communicate it, but then AI now became a tool, not the author. And that's a mistake that a lot of people make, is if they're like, oh, AI, I can write with AI. Okay, fine. But if AI is AI the author, or is AI the tool? And if AI is the author, you're going to be disappointed. If AI is the tool, and if it can fully capture you, your ideas, and your voice, now all of a sudden you are no longer battling the blinking cursor, and you're getting to the point where you can get published and crystallize your amazingness forevermore in a way that you could be proud of. And that's ultimately the process that we've gone through to discover. And we have another company that teaches real estate agents how to add investment real estate. And I was like, oh, we need a book for this company. And so I was like, we had a master class. So I took the master class. I transcribed the master class. I trained the AI based on our voice and who our customer was and what the psychographics were and the demographics of our customer. And then I took our master class, transcribed it, and then I was able to use AI as a tool and walk through that master class and turn it into a book manuscript that's sitting on that desk over there that we were able to, dude, 3 years. It took me 2 years to get Flip the Gratitude Switch done, 3 years to get our second book, Micro Wins to Millions, done. It took me 2 weeks to get Investor's Agent Blueprint done, because we already had the content and I'd figured out a way to leverage AI as a tool with our voice and with our content. And it's amazing, and it changed everything.
So that's the part that blows my mind when I think about this, because there's people out there that are marketing that right now, where it's like, hey, you can have your book by the end of the day. And I'm like, I can't even, the amount of value that I know is going to go in there. Yeah. My inner BS meter just fires off. I'm just like, no. So, but I got to tell you, like, I don't want to expose any of your process, but you're using ChatGPT to do this.
100%.
And you are, you screen recorded yourself doing this process. So I went and I tried it. Right. So I watched you do it.
Real quick. So your dramatic demonstration event, I was like, dude, let's turn it into a book. You need to be published. And you're like, really? I was like, get me the videos. We got the videos. We transcribed them. I trained the ChatGPT. I loomed it so that you could see exactly what I was doing. And then you tried to go through the same
I tried
process.
to go do it with something else of mine. But I got to tell you, like, there's still a ghost in the machine here. Because I spent, I don't know how much time doing the exact same thing. I took a 5-day challenge, and I transcribed each of them. And I was like, hey, that'd be 5 chapters. Because I've done this particular challenge so many times. It's this well-oiled thing. I'm like, now it's ready. If I could go put that in a book, that'd be great. So I went and I tossed it in. I followed your process. I was like pressing play on your loom, and then pausing, pressing play on the video and then pausing. And I followed it, and it still was, there's a legitimate skill set to prompting. There's a legitimate skill set to what you're doing. There's still something that you do. Because it was like, I was like, grab the story from each of these chapters and pull it, and it started telling the story of me on stage. Steve suddenly looked left and he gave a quote, and then he looked right.
Oh my gosh.
And he said another sentence that the audience went and gasped. It's telling the story of me on stage, not what I was saying. And I was like, dude, it's hard.
It's hard. Like,
how did you learn this? I mean, it's not as easy as just clicking a few buttons. And anyone who tells me that, I'm like, you must have spent 80 hours still on my book.
Oh, I probably spent more than that on your book.
I couldn't. It was amazing. Even with AI, like doing all this writing. It's insane how much time it's.
So here's what I've realized: it has to be a human-intensive, AI-assisted process. So the human-intensive has to exist. Now, here's the reason why I say it like that: is it's one thing to have content. So like, if we back up and we say, okay, if I have a 3-day event, or I do a masterclass, or I do, an online course, I do a challenge, whatever it is, and you've just flooded that thing with all your genius to bless the audience, and you get that transcribed, all right, you've got something. But it's very different because you're talking to an audience. We have to put it into some form of a book. And in order to do that, you have to have a feel for what makes a good book. And I think that that's part of the Ghost in the Machine is I have read so many books and I've spent so much time on stages articulating ideas and designing customer flows and processes. And I'm passionate about putting the customer in their story, making them the hero, and then telling them their own story in a way that makes sense. And I do that for our businesses. And I realize, like, if you come up here and you do a 3-day event and then I have that transcription, there still has to be a way that you know that the person consuming the book is going to be different than the person sitting in the room. So there's things that have to come out and there's things that have to go in. Right?
Yeah, yep.
And this is a big aha that I have had when it comes to books, especially. No matter how prolific you are, no matter how big the ideas are, if you want to have a really good book, there's 2 components. Okay? And some of my favorite books have these 2 components. All right? Number 1 is a big philosophical idea, a big idea that is in and of itself a game changer, and that idea should be the title of the book.
Gotcha.
Okay?
Okay.
Because if you have that one idea you can anchor to, even if you don't fully understand, like I'll give you an example, like Gap in the Gain, right? By Benjamin Hardy.
I was just thinking him, man. Like, okay, yeah.
He's really good at this.
Yeah.
10x is easier than 2x, right? Who, not how. He's totally nailed this. So you look at that. What did he do? He has a big idea. He's made it the title of the book. And now you go, piques my curiosity. And the reality is you read any of those books, dude, and he's going to give you a framework for implementing the big idea. And a lot of times the subtitle is going to be the framework that is going to implement the idea. So on our real estate book, it's Micro Wins to Millions.
Right.
That's the name of the book.
Right.
Subtitle, The Moneyball Real Estate System. Now that's the framework that I'm teaching to help people understand Micro Wins to Millions. The big idea. Right?
Gotcha. Okay.
And so you did this really brilliantly, maybe without even realizing it, with dramatic demonstrations. There's a book title. There's an idea. Dramatic demonstrations. What is that? That sounds cool. I don't really know what that is. And then I don't know if you've decided on the subtitle or not, but the subtitle is going to say something about the framework of what makes a dramatic demonstration. And now you go into the book and you reveal the framework that belongs to the big idea. And here's what's cool about that, okay? Everybody tries to push everything into a book. The reality is no one's going to read your book.
Okay.
Like, you have to realize that. And I say that and I'm being, people will read your book. People will listen to the book. But think about all the books that have made the most impact on your life, right? Chances are, if we went into your office and we looked at your bookcase and we went down the line, I could point to a book and you'd be like, oh man, this one idea came from that book. For the most part, somebody's going to take one big idea with 1 or 2 things that they're going to implement, and that's what's going to change their life. If you know that, now you design the book differently. Now you're designing the book and your content from the stage. You're bending ChatGPT to your will by, first of all, training ChatGPT on your personality. Like I had you do a bunch of you did a bunch of personality tests on Understand.me that you had.
Yeah.
So and we did the same thing for Russell Brunson, right? We did a little ebook for him.
It was cool to watch you use this.
Yeah. So
I had no idea this was part of the process.
So we take Understand.me, you take all of this stuff, and now you go to ChatGPT because you can make a custom GPT and you tell it what the voice of that GPT is going to be and what the purpose of that GPT is. So we take the personality results, then we take the psychographics, like who is the customer for the book.
That was that was nuts, man. Is it like that's what blew me away. So to watch you take all these personality hey, here's the reader, or sorry, here's the speaker, the voice.
Yeah.
I mean, right in this voice.
Right in this voice.
And here's his disc test, and this is Steve's all strengths finder. I thought that was nuts to watch that. But then also, I've done all this like research on like how to really design a dream customer with the psychographics.
Yes.
And then you did that and dumped it in as the dream reader, just like we would as a dream customer.
Yes.
That was nuts to watch that translate. And now it's like creates these 2 anchors.
Yeah, 100%. And the other thing that's really key that not everybody has, but if they have you in their back pocket, they might. So you talk about a ghost in the machine, like what you've been able to do for people on writing offer hooks.
Yeah, that was cool.
That
was cool to watch that.
Insane, right? Like, and so because you had an offer hook for your event, I could use the offer hook plus your psychographics, plus your demographics, plus your personality. We know what the purpose of the book is. We know what the general idea is that you're trying to help them and accomplish with the big idea and the framework. I give that all to ChatGPT, and I have to go through a whole process so that I get the right prompt and training, because you have about 8,000 characters that you can train a GPT on.
What? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So we throw it all together, and then now that goes into the GPT, and now we're ready to start to work on the transcribed content.
Yeah, the amount of time that you put into training it, I think was one of the most surprising things watching you go through this. And you know, it's interesting. Whenever I'm doing a 3-day event or a workshop or something, or my first speech, I have a very similar layout every time. My first speech, I call it the thesis, where I'm presenting an idea. Here's the core epiphany that made the idea. I'm going to lay out the main framework, and then I usually spend the remainder of the 3 days just walking through what the initial thesis was. And it was neat to watch that. It seemed like that's kind of what that helped anchor the
100%.
Remainder of the book as you went through it.
100%, which is why that offer hook is such an interesting component, right?
Okay.
Because the offer hook is ultimately saying, this is where I want to pique your curiosity, and then where we're going to go and what I ultimately have to offer. And so we've got to have that in the book combined with everything else.
Gotcha.
So now the GPT, when it starts to take now, and now this is the other key, we're transcribing your on-stage stuff, your challenge, your masterclass, your course.
Yeah.
So it's your words, your epiphanies, your nuances, and we're taking that. And then here's one of the things that's actually really cool. So when I transcribe it, we use AI to get it transcribed, and it has timestamps in it. Now, what I love about that is when I'm feeding a transcription to ChatGPT with timestamps, part of the instructions is ChatGPT, like, this is what I would say about it. You have to treat it like an employee that you're going to micromanage.
This part cracks me up.
Yeah. Like, you can't let it go.
The way, what you're telling it, no, you idiot.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what I told you. You speak to it like a human that's really incompetent.
Yes, you have to. And if you speak to it like a human that's incompetent and you remind it again and again, because it has tendencies, and I kid you not, dude, ChatGPT has moods. Like, sometimes I'll be working with it and it will have this tendency, and then the next day it won't have that tendency. So I don't know how that works, but you just have to be aware of it, and then you have to babysit it, then you have to micromanage it, and then you have to have a whole series of prompts that you've designed so that you can feed it the right prompt at the right time as it's transcribing and polishing. So it's this whole convergence that all of a sudden now allows you to take your ideas, your content, your voice, and for your customer, what you want them to accomplish, and boil it down into something that can live on, your words, your stuff, that can live on forevermore, and it still is yours. And this is the dude, I love this. Like, I tell this to people all the time, you know, because I've said it to you. Listen, we all think we have to do so much work to get a book done. What if I told you the work was already freaking done? You already did the work. When you stood up here and you bled out and you did everything you could to bless everybody in this audience, you did the work. You put in the time. So now let's take that and polish it and harness it, and then it's lightning in a bottle, and it's yours, and it can become this thing that allows your clients to refer business to you and allows people to get your ideas and keep them on the shelf. So you're literally taking up real estate on their shelf in their Zoom call, and they're seeing your name regularly. So they come back and buy from you again and again. There's so much that it can do, but it's got to be yours and it's got to be you. But you already have done the work. We don't give ourselves credit that we've already done the work and put in the time. This is a way that we can just reallocate that expense of brilliance and put it into a book like this.
It's interesting. I like meditating. It's changed my life. There was an interesting moment where I was like, man, I feel like I'm not getting as many downloads as I usually do in meditation. And it was actually, this came across in several weird ways, of which I won't go through. But basically, the concept was that until you start recording, there's no reason for you to keep receiving.
Interesting.
You know what I mean? Like, you're not. I had a coach once that told me, he's like, you're not creating anything. You're being created through. Your job is actually to be a glass.
Yeah.
And be as clean a glass
awesome.
as possible
Yeah.
for divinity to speak through.
Yeah.
But there was been moments though where I'm like, man, I feel like I'm not discovering as much anymore. I feel like I'm not, and it actually came back to the point that what I had done is not preserved. It's on dusty hard drives.
Yeah.
They're not in books. They're not ideas that
That's
are
right.
going to go, permeate forever. And that was actually what was stopping me from. That was one of the major reasons. It was so to think the work is already done.
Yeah.
And now it's just, this is a way to repurpose it and put it out. It's really, really fascinating.
And to do it in pretty short order, right? The one nice thing about using AI is it's a lot faster than a human if you know how to bend it to your will, right? So like I could do the Investor's Agent Blueprint book in less than 2 weeks. I spent a couple weeks on your book, but dude, your transcripts, the original manuscript of the Dramatic Demonstrations book that you and Russell are doing was 160,000 words.
It's a little too much for a book.
And so what I did with yours is, that's way too much for a book, right? So what I did with yours is I did that, and then we go back through and we polish.
Yeah.
And we edit. Elon Musk is the epitome of edit, right? Have you read the Walter Isaacson biography of Elon Musk?
No.
Dude,
Okay.
the guy is all about cut. He wants to cut so far that it no longer works, and then he just adds a little bit, right?
Okay.
So like when he was doing the solar roof company, that the way they had to install a roof, it like took all this hardware. He's like, I want to do it with one nail. So then they try to install a roof with a nail, and it was total trash. So he's like, all right, we'll do 2. And then I think they like settle on 3 or something like that, right? But a book is very similar. Like 160,000, we've got to polish that. And here's the other thing that I think is nice about both the AI and then having a human that understands books to work with it is you're so married to your content that you wonder, what can I cut out? What can I take away? Well, if you give the right instructions to an AI that's been trained to do your book, it can do that for you where it takes out some of the superfluousness. Right?
Sure.
I don't know if that's a word. We're going to assume that it is.
Yeah, it is.
And then when somebody is looking at it and reading it and realize, oh, okay, well, that was actually a little bit of a duplication because I'm babysitting the GPT. I'm reading your book and your content as I'm going. So it's very labor intensive, but it still means that I could get your book from a 3-day event from 160,000 words to a manageable manuscript and do it inside of a couple weeks so you can crystallize your brilliance and now use the book for a funnel, use the book as a bonus for an event, use the book as a way for clients to refer business to you or whatever it needs to be. And so, but that process is really hard. It's extremely difficult for us to edit our own work because we're so in love with it that it's really hard to determine what's there and what's not there. So that does make a case for, okay, well, if somebody else is helping me, or even an AI and another human is helping me, all of a sudden we get the good stuff. And if we know there's a big idea and a framework, and if it doesn't lend itself to the big idea and doesn't lend itself to the framework, it doesn't need to be in the book.
Snip.
Because nobody's going to remember everything that's in the book anyway. They're going to take the big idea and some of the framework.
Gotcha.
Real quick, Jordan Peterson, right? Dude, have you ever gone and listened to Jordan Peterson speak?
He's extremely smart.
Oh my gosh, the guy's crazy, but he's amazing. But his book, the one that really put him on the map, he still had a big idea and a framework, but he flip-flopped the two. And so that's another thing you could do in a book. So his book, 12 rules for life or something like that.
Yeah.
But then the real big idea is his subtitle, An Antidote to Chaos. Right? So same thing, but look, this guy knows all of the things, right? He boiled it down to 12 rules that all lend themselves to an antidote for chaos. And so I think that that's really important for people to understand. And a lot of times you're so close to your content that you can't even see the big idea in the framework.
What's been interesting for me through this process is to observe in myself, though, that so when I'm even designing a 3-day event, I mean, there's a lot that I go through.
Yes.
There's a bunch that I go through with it. And on stage, it's interesting that there's a necessity for certain things in there. But the book, being a different medium, does not require those things. And it's made me actually, in reverse, prune certain things from my events.
Interesting.
Because I'm realizing the same thing. I was like, this is good, and you should hear this, but maybe in the context of this idea, it could be cut
Yeah.
And just keep pruning. It's interesting how much this book writing thing is causing brevity on stage.
That's cool.
Point.
That's
In
really
reverse.
cool. Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah.
But and I think it's important that we understand that that's like what our audience is experiencing, right? Like, I mean, I've been to your events, right? They're amazing. And and when I go to other big events, like this is what I do. I have my notes and I take notes on everything. But then if it's a big idea and I know I put a big star by it in my notes, then when the event's done, I go back and there's always one or two of those big stars that I implement.
That's the one.
That's the one.
Yeah.
And then that changes my business. Like all of the other stuff was good and it created the environment for me to get that one. And that's what we have to understand. The book is another medium that creates the environment for the one or two things that are going to be absolutely life altering for somebody. But it can't exist if we don't have it. And the other thing you mentioned, dude, is like you and I were talking about this before we started to record. When we're on stage, we have like those epiphanies, right?
Oh, it's
best. Like, ooh,
that's half the reason I built this stage.
Yes, it's like, oh, dang,
I love that feeling.
That was good. Well, here's the deal. How many times have you been on stage, had one of those epiphanies, and then you went, dude, that was so good, I'm never gonna forget it, and then you're like, what was that thing that I said? I don't know. That's happened to me a bunch, right?
Sure.
But if you take that event and you take that epiphany, that you're in an environment that creates it, and now that's able to come out and it goes into the book, it actually helps you understand your content better. And this is a thing that I don't think a lot of people understand about books, is if you will go through a process with your book and your content, and then if we do this AI process and we put it into a book and now you're consuming your content, I don't know if you've had this experience as you've been going through your dramatic demonstration book, but now you're consuming your content in a different medium than the one you delivered it in, it helps you create additional clarity around what it is you're teaching and how you're teaching it, which makes you a better communicator and entrepreneur because you're experiencing your content in a different way.
I experience a version of that. So I like to teach the same idea, usually at a minimum of 3 events, because every time I do it, the next one is so wildly different. You know, it's the same content of sorts, but it's just I prune and discover, prune and discover,
Iterations.
prune and discover, iteration. But it is interesting to notice, though, that as I'm doing that, switching the medium. Yeah. As you just said, that switching of the key, because usually what I'm doing is I'm listening to me back on stage, and I'm like, okay, I said too many ums or ahs, and I don't really care about that stuff. But you know, I can't tell you how many, like the dramatic demonstrations book itself was a wildly different framework. I mean, even when Russell and I taught it at Funnel Hacking Live 2 times, it's very different than what I actually ended up putting in the book. Yeah. Like what's on stage at FHL is actually wrong. And I wouldn't have known that without all these iterations, but I never considered that switching medium actually shortcuts that.
So I'll give you another example. So I did a book for Russell, right? Just a little, he's going to use it in a little funnel. Yeah. So he gave me 2. I hope I can share this. He's a
marketer, right? He's free attention.
Right. He did 2 talks at 2 different FHLs called Funnel Audibles, right? Yeah. Super good. I remember them both. I was in the room for both of them. But what's interesting is his delivery evolved quite a bit from the first and the second. Okay? Sure. So the first one, it was like Funnel Audibles. And the second one, it was like 7 steps or like 7 ways to call a funnel audible, right? So that evolution of content was interesting for me because as I started to go through, I went, oh, here's the book framework. Funnel audibles is the big idea. We've got the 7 ways that we can call audibles. And then I was able to draw content from the first talk that gave additional context to each of the 7. But because we had a framework and because we had a big idea, I voxed him like after I sent him the manuscript. Like I got it done in, a couple days for him. And I sent it to him, and I hadn't heard from him. He was at Bear Lake, and he voxed me back. He's like, yeah, dude, it's pretty much already designed and ready to go into a funnel. And I went and looked at what he put together, and it was awesome. So easy to consume. Wow. And all of a sudden, here's the key for me. He gave that talk twice on stage at FHL, and I remember him talking about funnel audibles. If you ask me, what were they, Kev? I'd be like audibles for funnels. Like I wouldn't know, right? I don't remember. But now that it's in a book and he's going to launch an entirely separate funnel, because I read it and went through it in that medium, I'd be like, oh my gosh, it's so good. Like he's giving you really good stuff on how to judge your success and how to switch up your success inside of a funnel based on a handful of metrics that he puts into these like 7 secrets of funnel audibles, right? And it's amazing. I was like, oh my gosh, I understand my marketing better because it's now in this format. And so I just think that it's really important to understand, like we deliver, and then when we switch the medium and we even switch the way we're thinking about our content because of the medium, we get better at it. Our audience gets it in a different way. And now all of a sudden they can read our stuff, listen to our stuff, and come to our event. And the likelihood of them buying from us again and again and referring business to us and changing their life, it goes up dramatically, all because we have this additional medium that adds this sort of incredible credibility to the message.
Wow.
Dude, it's awesome.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
That's really huge. Okay, so I just want to just kind of walk through the process that I'm going through with it. Because, like,
Yeah.
So we're saying, first off, number one, I taught like crazy and spent years of research until I felt like the work was good enough, right?
Yes.
Then I did it on stage specifically as a book recording.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that even thinking through, like, doing it in this room here, you know, it was packed. We had so many people here.
Yeah, you did.
And really, really loved it. But I could tell even by the end, like the afternoon of day 3, everyone's emotional cup was full. They're like,
Sure.
I got the ideas. And I'm like, but there's 2 more core concepts that we need here. And anyway, so then I handed you the transcript.
Yep.
Or at the recordings.
The recordings.
You turned them in the transcript and created a ghostwriting piece.
Yep. So I took your stuff, I trained the GPT, I trained the AI, then I took the videos and transcribed them. Yep.
Right. And that process created a version that was 160,000 words. And
Yes.
then you went through it again.
Different set of
prune it.
prompts. Yep.
Yeah.
So when I went through it again, it was the same GPT. There's a few things, and you know, there's even how you divide up the content and feed it through that custom AI can change based on how the AI is responding and reacting.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you could do it all in one. Sometimes you have to break it into chapters. Sometimes you have to break chapters into individual chats that are using that AI. So it just depends.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're breaking a new GPT out for just because I ran into that when I tried to do it my own.
Yeah.
And it was weird. It created this little because it uses the data that you put in
Yes.
for future things.
Right.
It was messed up.
Yeah. And
really
it does
messed
things
up.
like it tries to summarize a thing that you give it, and it tries to put bullet points in when they don't need to be there. So you just have to watch that. So when you're going through the mass, so it's like transcripts, polish it, manuscript, way too long. Now we write a different set of prompts and we write a different process, and now we send it back through bit by bit, 1 or 2 pages at a time, dude. Like,
that was the other thing too. I kept trying to be like, well, I wonder if I can just paste in 5,000 words at once. No.
You cannot.
You're doing it sometimes, paragraph by paragraph
Yeah.
for 160,000 words.
Uh-huh.
It's very, because I think that there's this tendency, and I definitely thought this, I misthought about what AI is doing, where it's almost like how you would search something on Google.
Yeah.
You type it in and press a button, bloop, and it's there. Or
Yeah.
it's like a calculator,
Yeah.
1 + 1 = 2. It's very human intensive still.
100%. And I think the other element to it that I think is, you said the ghost in the machine, like so I've ended up starting a business out of this, right? And I have you to thank for that, because like I just did the dramatic demonstration book for you because I was like, dude, you got to have your stuff in a book, right? And then you and I started to talk, and it was like, dude, this might actually be like
Huge.
a biz op. Like all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh. And so I structured it as that. And now this is now another business of mine. We're doing books for people. But here's the thing that I've realized. Part of the ghost in the machine is you have to have somebody babysitting the AI, even though you train it, even though you have the transcript, even though it's your words and your ideas, it has to be somebody that cares about your stuff. And the reason why I say that is, like, I look at what I'm doing, and I have no, maybe this is, Grant Cardone would be mad because I'm not going to 10X necessarily, but I'm just, dude, like, I am looking at this and I'm going to take on how many projects I want to, with the people that I really love and whose content I know needs to be in the world. And the reason for that is I need to love their content or fall in love with it, because then that actually helps train the AI in a way that you get a better finished product. And I know that that's not, as a business owner, I know that I should be thinking about scale, and there would be ways to scale aspects of it. But for me, it's like, I just feel so passionate about books and so passionate about this process to help people like you, like finally translate their genius into this digestible, portable format. That I don't know. So I think that might be part of the Ghost in the Machine. I don't know, but
No, that makes sense. That makes sense because even just watching the recordings of you talking to this AI,
Yeah.
you're talking to like it's a human being.
Yes.
But you're also being rough on it.
Yeah.
And hey, look, that's not what I said.
Yeah.
Stop. Like,
Right.
And you're being pretty rough. Like,
Yeah. That's right.
Like I was anyway. So like, I think it's great, and it makes sense why you do it for projects that matter. It's just like I like to work with entrepreneurs who are not just trying to buy something for $5 and sell it for $6.
Yeah.
I hate that kind of like. I get it, not judging it, but that's not. Like,
Yeah.
I'm working with innovators. I get it.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So then I got it back from you, 120,000 word manuscript.
Yep.
Since then, what's happened is I've gone to an editor, and I handed it to the editor along with all the recordings of the event.
Yeah.
And they were like, we have never and they've been doing this a long time. I think they put out 100 books this month.
Wow.
Like they're just churning out. They got
That's
a
awesome.
huge organization
Yeah,
that
that's
they're doing
amazing.
it with. And this publisher is like, we have never in our entire history of being in a company ever had someone do all of this amount of hard work and heavy lifting ahead of time. And it's not that I'm not involved.
No, you're very involved.
My biggest fear with doing AI is that it just writes it and then my art is gone.
Yeah, that's
right. The art is
can't
gone.
have that.
But what's actually happened is I said, here's the process. I have killed myself over just getting out this material. Right.
Yeah.
So the material is out. I did it on stage. Then it went through this AI rinse, like several versions of it, really.
Yeah.
We got it down to this piece. I said, should I get into is this the part where you want me to get in and start rewriting everything? Making sure it's in my paragraph by paragraph, going through chapter structure, like, because I'm gonna do that. I care.
Yeah.
And they said, no one's ever done this before. Let's see what happens. And what they came back with, I just got this message like 2 days ago. Their main head editor was like, this was an absolute joy to read. There's a lot of things to change in terms of just finishing the prepping.
Sure.
Because it came from a ghostwriting thing.
Yeah.
But the amount of lifting to do from here forward it's minimal.
Yeah.
Now I get to go in and don't have to like wade through all of the trash.
Yeah.
You know, I thought I was
Right.
going to be involved in like stage 2 and then 3
Yeah.
and then 4 and then 5. Really, what I think is cool and what you're finding is you go and it's the heavy input focus. Then it goes through this long process where you don't interact with it.
Yeah.
And now I got the actual first rinse through the editor back, which took a couple weeks also. And now I'm going to go through and do my deep dive.
So that's awesome.
And they're like, this rocks.
Yeah.
They're like, we've never had anyone get this far. Like, this is amazing.
See,
It's freaking cool.
and so you've
So I'm still
completely-
involved. Like,
yeah,
I'm not
still,
trying
it's
to
still
like,
your book.
yeah, I'm
your
writing every
content.
word still, but it's like
You're involved.
totally different.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's just a different process. I mean, it's kind of like this, dude. I always think about Uber, right? So Uber was like, you could either leave the airport in a taxi or like a friend could pick you up, right? And it was like,
Different experience.
yeah, it was like either or. But then what Uber did is Uber said, or we can get strangers to pick you up at the airport and take you home, and it can be on demand, and it's quicker, and it's easier, and it's really slick because you're using this app, and you can rate your driver, and all of a sudden they created this new way of getting a ride home from the airport that is now like really prolific. And I feel
Yeah.
like this ghostwriting process is that. It's not conventional ghostwriting, and it's not writing with AI. It's somewhere in between, right? We have a vice president who loves Venn diagrams. If you were to look at a Venn diagram, I think that's kind of, it's like your genius, ghostwriting conventionally that also is very expensive. And then, ghostwriting with AI, which could be less expensive, but really trashy.
Trash, yeah.
And so somehow all of that is kind of meeting, and it's creating, what we call legacy book. That is kind of the process. And really that process, I call it alchemy. It's author alchemy.
Yeah.
Because all we're doing is we're taking what exists and we're turning it into something different. And so we're alchemizing your stuff, and it's your stuff that then you get to do whatever you need to once you get it back to make sure it's exactly what you want to share with the world, but we condense significantly the time frame, the effort. Because, dude, honestly, answer this honestly. If we hadn't have done this, Steve, how long would it have taken you to write your dramatic demonstration book, to even get an initial manuscript done?
It would have probably been another year. I mean, in all reality,
Yeah.
I just got stuff going on.
Yep.
You know, and it's
You're
like
busy.
it's not that it's not important, but it's funny though. Someone in the audience, they're like, "When do I get the replays for this?" I'm like, "Well, not till the book comes out." And there was an audible boo.
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, okay. I will get this out as fat." And he was dead serious, just like death glare. Like, I need this back now. This stuff was amazing.
You know what's funny about that though, dude? And this is
Okay,
why I like
this is collapsing time.
Yeah.
Is what it's doing.
What I like about this whole process too is like take the replays, all right? So how many times have you had somebody, and maybe you have, everybody's always like, "Oh, I want the replays." I'm like, it is going to collect digital dust. You are never going to watch this. And you maybe will watch. There's even times I've got replays. I was like, "Oh, that was so good. I'm totally going to go back and watch that." Nope, I don't. And so then all of a sudden, all that work just sits on a digital shelf collecting digital dust. This way, we took the replays and we did something that somebody really might, consume and do something with, listen to it on Audible, read the book, have a way to reference it, know? Because that was always a pet peeve of mine too. Oh, okay, we're going to do the replays.
When do I get the replays? I'm like, tell me when you will go through them, and I'll accelerate that answer.
That's so true.
It's so funny. So this editor I'm working with, she's telling me that all this research that has gone into seeing, audiobooks are such a key piece now.
Yeah.
Right. And I know there's ways to create audiobooks with AI and all that stuff too. I'm going to actually read it.
Yeah.
And create
That's
commentary.
what I've done with mine too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. She started telling me, because I've had this notion, like 120,000 words is still too
lot.
much.
Yeah.
Like
it is.
Really need to chop it in half even down to
100%.
that. And she's like, yeah, even less. And I was like, really? Because
Yeah.
I want a book,
Yes.
And she goes, no, the new length things, you need it shorter.
Yeah.
You need a solid idea.
Yep.
And what she told me with this audiobook research is that the average person, I might mess it up a little bit, but the average person listens to like 120 pages when they're in an audiobook. But if they're reading, I don't know if it's less.
Yeah, I'm sure
and so
it's
with
a lot less.
audio, you're consuming far more as well.
Yeah.
And so if things like Amazon are also looking at how much the book percentage-wise is being consumed, writing a shorter book sometimes is strategically better, both for the listener and the reader, but also for you ranking and getting more things out there. And I was
Interesting.
like, that's a fascascinating.
Yeah.
Shorter is kind of a better thing now with these books.
40 to 60,000 words is kind of a sweet spot,
Okay.
I
was going for 80, but even then they were like, no, bring it down a little more.
Yeah, that's right. But it lends itself to what we were talking about earlier, that why would the brevity be important? Because what somebody's going to consume and then take from. And here's the thing. So, Amazon may look at it as, what are people consuming? I'm looking at my book and my content, not in terms of what are they consuming, but are they acting?
Sure.
Right? And so if you think about it, like if we have a really good idea and a really awesome implementable framework. So I did this with my book, Flip the Gratitude Switch, without realizing it, right? I just know, like, we've sold that book in more than 24 countries, right? And I do zero marketing. I sell every month on Audible and Amazon. I do no marketing for it, right? We know that book has legitimately saved at least 3 people's lives.
Wow.
Like, it's crazy to me, right? People that I had no idea who they were. And what we did is we had a big idea, Flip the Gratitude Switch, which may or may not make sense. And then it was a simple 4-step framework to shift the trajectory of your life. And that framework, that portable framework that lent itself to the big idea, is why the book has lived on long after I started to market it. And somebody may take one of the 4 steps and use it. They may just take the big idea of understanding that you can sort of will gratitude even into life's most frustrating and difficult moments. And here's the process to do it. And that can change them. But because that existed, big idea and framework, people are taking something from it and doing something. And so you look at dramatic demonstrations, you have all of this great stuff. It could be this playbook of how to do it.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what it did for me. It made me realize that anytime I launch anything, I must do some form of a dramatic demonstration. And it has changed the way I'm looking at everything that we're doing and everything we're launching. So Steve, you stood up here for 3 days, and I know that content because I got to go through it. I got to watch it. I got to help you take your words and polish them with AI. And I know that content, but I can't tell you all of your frameworks.
Sure.
But what I can tell you is that idea, you were so convincing that it has completely shifted the way that I look at how we market everything moving forward. you had that impact, and you're going to have that impact on millions more because of the book.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for saying that, man.
Yeah,
I
it's
appreciate
true.
that. I appreciate you being here. And I do want to give you the opportunity. I mean, where can people go? Because I know we've had several different ideas on what it could be called and such.
Yeah.
You're writing books for other people
Yeah, we're doing
already
it
with
right
this
now.
process.
Yeah, we're doing it right now. So you can go to legacybook.ai.
Cool. Legacybook.ai.
Yep.
And you have several different options of working with people as well there.
Yeah, there's, some people just need a manuscript like you, right?
Yeah.
You just needed a manuscript, and it's like, I've got a publisher, I'm going to take it all the way over here.
Yeah.
Some people want to have a fully polished book that has cover design, line edit, copy edit, all of that. So we'll do the manuscript. So the cool thing is we could do the manuscript just by itself in around 2 weeks. If we do a manuscript plus we go through and we do the line edit and the copy edit and the cover design and kind of all of that stuff, that takes, closer to a couple months.
Sure.
And then we do
Which
have
is still fast.
Oh yeah, totally
Really,
fast.
really
Yeah.
fast.
And that's just somebody that wants to do even less, right? Like you're so active. It's like, I want the manuscript and now we're going to go do these things.
Get my hands back in it.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
I have, a lot of people that are like, I just want to be able to throw the book on Amazon and Audible because I know that it's got to be ready for that so we can get it all the way there. The other thing that we do is because, anybody that's out there that's a marketer is probably thinking about a book funnel of some sort.
Yeah.
And so we also will do, I've got a brilliant funnel builder that I work with. And so what we'll do with the top end package is we'll do the manuscript, we'll do the line edit, the copy edit, the cover design, everything. We'll also build the funnel. We'll also get it on Amazon and on Audible. And whether you want to read it or you want to use, there's really good voice cloned AI that's out there. So if you want a total hands-off, soup to nuts, you can literally go from, I did an event last week, to I have a fully published audiobook and digital book and physical book on Amazon in 100 days or less.
And book funnel.
And you don't a book funnel, and you don't have to write a word.
I think that's what's so crazy about this AI stuff is that it really is. I tell people all the time, it's not the final say in my creative process, but it's absolutely, it's the difference between walking to a destination and driving to one. You're still gonna get to the same spot. It's just you're paying for speed.
That's right.
And but it's not as simple as just like 1 + 1 = 2.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot, including myself, I kept thinking that it's very manual still.
Yeah.
It's as smart as it
100%.
is, AI is still very dumb.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like it can't. There's no.
So true, dude.
There's no. What's the word I'm looking for? There's no.
Logic doesn't think logically.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't process.
Intuition.
Intuition.
There's no intuition.
Yeah. It doesn't have a feel. It
Yeah.
just has language, right?
Exactly.
So you've got to force the soul into this work, right?
It's intelligent but not smart.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's a good way to put it. And
Yeah.
dude, and you look at all this, and one of the reasons why we really decided to do this is like the ghostwriter who I used for Flip the Gratitude Switch, after I had a fully written manuscript, she charges $50,000.
Sure.
A subpar ghostwriter is still going to charge 30, 40 grand, right?
Easily.
And so I thought, well, if we can charge significantly less than that and give significantly more, or even charge in the neighborhood but give significantly more,
Plus the speed.
And that is really the magic. And so you can go to legacybook.ai and kind of see it.
Yeah.
I have a little presentation you can watch, and I kind of go through the 3-step author alchemy process and what we're doing there.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's fun, man. It's cool. It's really
awesome.
cool.
Well, Kevin Clayson, thanks for being on here, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve Larson.
Yeah. Go check out legacybook.ai.
Yep.
Not .com.ai. And seriously, your work on what you're doing, it's literally going to get what I do out to everyone who follows fast.
Yeah.
And honestly at a quality that I don't even know that I would be able to replicate just because it is so powerful. So thanks so much for all your work, man.
Yeah, thank you, man. It's
you're
awesome.
You're a vision accelerator in what you're doing with this. So
Well, visionaries like you deserve that. And that's one thing that I just kind of like, maybe as we're wrapping up, let everybody realize is like your genius 100% deserves to be crystallized and proliferated. And having your genius in a book allows that to take place, not just for your customers, but for the people you love most. That's why we call it Legacy Book. I'll tell you, one of the most profound impacts that I've had in book writing in my life is my children know I'm an author. And my children know that they can go find Dad in those books.
That's cool.
And when I'm not here, the book still will be. And I get to still be with them. My ideas, my genius, the stuff that God's given me to share with the world, the stuff that I have to share, it can be there on their shelf, in their hands, whether I'm here or not. And every single person deserves to have that. And I'm so excited that that journey is now beginning for you, because the world needs more Steve Larson.
No, thanks, brother. Appreciate it. Oh, man, appreciate it. Hey, thank you so much, man.
Yeah,
Thanks for being
bro.
on here.